So you mentioned the question of, migrants are theoretically and politically so important because they transgress and transcend all kinds of borders. In the Indian case, you have state borders, a border of daily regulation, what is permissible, what is not, what is desirable, what is not. So now, Jonathan, do you want to join, ask Ranabir questions from you?
I can join.
Yeah. No, that's
With
just a
my
part of
June
conversation. Yeah,
this was
don't
such
worry
a,
about
I was just, this will be cut out, but let me just say it's so much, so inspiring already to listen to both of you.
Okay, so I will mute and I will be the migrants of the invisible figure for a moment. Okay, yeah.
So Ranabir, one thing that came up for me, and that appeared towards, especially in reading your most recent book, The Pandemic and the Politics of Life, which came on towards the end perennially, but seems quite also a central question, is that of information, of the circulation of information, and that the question of awareness among different groups in this particular moment of crisis of a pandemic. But I guess that would also count for other moments of crisis. So as we think about the role of mobility in this context of a crisis, perhaps we can talk a bit more about this role of information. You're talking about it. You have this brief moment at the end, I think, towards the end of the book, where you say the lower classes have shown a larger. There's points that there's research showing that lower classes have a larger awareness of of what is happening in relation to the crisis, probably both in terms of the regulations and the restrictions, but also the effects, I would imagine, of COVID-19. So I was wondering, I mean, how do you see this? How is on the one side concretely, how is information circulating within these groups, within migrants, but also within the poorer population, within the lower classes? What is the role of social media here, and whom is it reaching and whom not, and how does that play out for migrants? I see it as, in a sense, closely related as well to the to what you call the biopolitics from below and the question of life, because in this kind of moment, at least from my reading, awareness and understanding information about regulations, about the effects of the virus, becomes also crucial for survival itself. You need to know, if you're in a vulnerable position, it seems to me you need to know what you're able to do and what you're not able to do. And if we turn it on the head, perhaps even unawareness here is also something that's resolved for those who have a privilege, who have the privilege to be ignorant and can afford that. So I was wondering, maybe you can talk about that relationship as well.
I have to admit that I did not think of this part, deeply. Even though I refer to that, so my views or response would be sketchy. But what I found and what I wanted to suggest was that the information, of course, if you take the case of migrants, how were they finding out these 300, 400, 600 kilometers of roads they were traveling? They were using the mobile handset, which was omnipresent in all the migrant marches. How did they respond to the sudden declaration of the lockdown? And as if it was choreographed, that from different parts of India, thousands of migrants came out, defied government restrictions and started marching. Why did they think that they should get back home? Why did they not put their faith on the promises of the government that we shall look after you? So I think in many inquiries, a certain kind of material understanding of what life is, very physical understanding of what life is, your own biological experiences, these things count, and you sift information to a large extent on the basis of that. Also, you have to take into account the earlier experiences of poor people in a great public health crisis. It's not that maybe they had not directly experienced, but their forefathers had, or their mothers, grandparents had. There were customary protocols in place. How do you enter a slum? What are the minimum safety rules that you must follow? That you must wash your hands fit when you enter. I mean, I will give you an experience. These are all well chronicled. The biggest slum of Asia, Dharavi in Mumbai, that scored spectacular success twice, noticed by the Mumbai Municipal Corporation, that in Dharavi, that slum area, where one public utility was shared by, on an average, 30 families. So which would mean 5 members, so 150 to 200 people. Now, municipal corporation would ensure once a day cleaning. And then they put together money so that it was cleaned 3 times to 4 times a day. And again, they observed certain rules, not imposed from outside, but which helped them to avert, given the extreme congestion and the density of population in the slum areas, massive crisis. But I think I'm only thinking of the urban experience. In the villages also, there was this informal prohibition on people visiting the villages. No, this is the time of distress. You can't come to a village. Including members of a family, when they wanted to return, and they were strict, the local committee would say, no, you can't come. We have to save whoever are there. But this time, I don't know, probably it has not worked in UP where infection has spread to villages. I have very little information on that. And I know that large number of people have died. I have no count. Bodies have been simply, dumped on the riverside, and then with the river swelling, at times the earth has been washed on from the surface, and bodies have floated on the river. And by a conservative estimate, hundreds of bodies, probably 1,000 to 2,000 bodies. And I don't know whether these are counted as COVID deaths or not. And in the villages, I think they have been probably, a greater tragedy is taking place. From the villages, large people, I assume, went to the religious gatherings, and they came back, and they had no knowledge when they felt chest pain, when they felt certain symptoms. There is no medic in the village. They had no place to go. And there are reports that when suddenly the villagers would find that one of them dropping dead after 4 days, 5 days, what would they do? Long line in the crematorium. and then bodies are being dumped or disposed of. But I think, therefore, probably a greater tragedy is taking place in the villages of northern India, and how they are coping, how they are not. I really do not know. The only thing I can say is that, what information they have, what information they do not have, and the political parties who have been active in these villages during, quote and unquote, normal political times, can they come of any help, or did they realize that the extent of the crisis was so much? I do not know. I can only say that I'm speechless. I have no clue as to what is happening in the villages in UP. I know, on the whole, what is happening in my state, West Bengal, where there is a semblance of government. The government is trying to set up, expand the public health infrastructure to the local subdivisional towns, small towns, so that the villagers are there, and there is a greater political mobilization, which is helping the villagers, because village politics is very, very active in Bengal. But the only, therefore, comment that I can make is that perhaps, and I'm very tentative, that perhaps the way in which left or populists mobilize the people in the villages, in these small towns, you find in these times of crisis the value of that. That you have your trusted cadres who not necessarily act on commandments from the top, but it is simply as members of the political society, which extends to villages and small towns, that they become active and save people. So social leadership, if you think of social leadership actually is produced precisely through these kinds of massive populist mobilizations and left mobilizations, not now, but in the past decades. And on the other hand, where you have a very parliamentary, rule-oriented liberal politics, where villagers are left at mercy of God, or you leave them to fate, there is no one to save you. And there is a greater number of violence. If you speak of violence, that's the greater violence. I mean, the liberal media in India is agog with, roughly 20 deaths in the post-war violence in my state. And the populists are blamed for that. Perhaps they should be blamed for political violence. But the other side is that precisely it is this battle for life that goes on in the village in the name of politics actually saves you. Because that ensures that in each and every village there is a political activist. There is someone who will claim that I speak on behalf of the public, and this is what we have to do. So the tragedy that is happening in UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh actually shows that old caste-oriented and other kinds of social leadership is not effective in a massive life crisis like this. But it is precisely the way in which politics, the left and kind of populist politics, which organize the people in decades, that is helping, that is working as savior. I know this is a completely unconventional kind of thing, and I've been, thinking I will write on that, but I know I will be, put to flack, receive flaks from all around. Liberals just don't like the way I see politics.